Hi guys, I'm Lakshmi from the Instagram account An Indian Girl's Journey. I'm a physician from India and I have recently matched into an internal medicine program in the United States. Today we have with us Dr. Ishit Chauhan who has matched into a prelim surgery position. How are you, Dr. Ishit?
I'm good, Lakshmi. How are you doing?
I'm good. And I think you just reached the US after a very tiring flight.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Okay, so you must be tired, but thank you so much for taking some time out to, inspire other people like yourself to achieve great things.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got to this point and, stuff like that?
Sure. So, I went to China for med school,
Mm-hmm.
and it was during, like, after I had come back, given my FMG examination for India, the medical license exam for India.
Mm-hmm.
It was after somewhere midway during my internship that I actually decided that I'll pursue USMLE and pursue the steps.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like I gave my step one right after I finished my internship.
Mm-hmm.
um, but the good thing with my medical school was the fact that there was a disconnect between the place where I was doing my internship in India versus the place where I was doing my med school in China.
Okay.
So I was able to extend my graduation
Okay.
even after finishing my internship because I never essentially submitted my documents to the med school.
Okay. Okay.
So, so it was during that time of extension that I essentially gave my step one, step two CS, did
Mm-hmm.
my electives, and then when I came back from the US, that's when I started working on a research. I started working in India,
Okay.
in Delhi,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when I published research. And as far as like my scores and everything are concerned, I had a 232 on step one, which is
Mm-hmm.
slightly above average,
Mm-hmm.
and then a 226, which is slightly below average for CK.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a non-US IMG,
Mm-hmm.
and my year of graduation, when my university finally processed everything, was 2019.
Okay.
So, as I said, like one of the things that I did do was extend my graduation, and that's one of the questions that many people ask, if it's seen negatively or if it's seen in a bad light or something.
Mm-hmm.
For me, there were two things that essentially happened. Like for the FMG, I had to extend it simply because the FMG is only the foreign medical graduate examination, that's a licensing exam for India,
Mm-hmm.
is only held twice a year. So
Okay.
I was only eligible for the one that was in December. So I had to give up like uh, essentially like 5 to 6 months
Mm-hmm.
um, that I used for preparation
Mm-hmm.
for the FMG, but I had to give that time up essentially just because that was the next exam that I was eligible for.
Okay.
Thereafter, I did my electives and everything, and yeah, I did four electives.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Three of them were at Mount Sinai.
Mm-hmm.
Among those three, two were in cardiology, one was in neurosurgery, and and there was a fourth elective that I did at Florida International University.
Okay.
That was in general surgery. So I had a good mix of internal medicine electives and a good mix of surgical electives.
Okay.
And that was essentially because at that point in time, like many people had discouraged me to pursue surgery,
Mm-hmm.
and I, even though I wanted to pursue surgery, I was kind of like in two boats.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted my application to be broad enough that
Mm-hmm.
I can use the same application to apply for surgery and the same application to apply for internal medicine.
Okay. And at what point did you realize that you want surgery and not you're just going to focus on surgery?
All right, so it was essentially during the interview process. I applied for 185 internal medicine programs. I applied for 100 general surgery programs,
Mm-hmm.
including prelim and categorical.
Okay.
Um, So it was during that point in time that one of my, I would say, mentors
Mm-hmm.
essentially said that, like he said that prepare for the worst, and the worst was that I don't match because I
Okay.
only had like two interviews for surgery, two
Mm-hmm.
interviews for medicine,
Okay.
and he said prepare for the worst, and that's when I realized that even though I had applied for medicine, even though I had two interviews for medicine, they were from a primary care place,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't really. If I got internal medicine, I wouldn't be really happy at a primary care hospital.
Okay.
So that's when I realized that I should focus all my energy into surgery, and that was essentially my kickoff point. I realized that even if I don't match in Match 2020,
Mm-hmm.
um, I would build up my application subsequently for the subsequent match in such a way that it shouts surgery, and that I would apply broadly for surgery and focus my energy on surgery.
Okay. And you said you extended your medical school duration. So by how many months or years did you extend it?
So it comes out to be a whole year that my medical school graduation was extended.
So technically you were supposed to graduate in 2018, but you graduated in 2019.
Yep.
Okay. And you said you have some publications. Did you have those at the time that you applied, or did you get them later?
So as of right now, I only have two publications.
Okay.
At the time when I applied, back in September 2019, I
Mm-hmm.
had just one publication,
Okay.
but it's a prospective cohort study.
Okay.
So what we published at that point in time was the design paper,
Mm-hmm.
and essentially like the preliminary data.
Mm-hmm.
So from that research, we will definitely have more publications coming in with like more information as we collect more data.
Okay.
But as of right now, at the time of application, sorry, that was the only publication that I had, and that was actually with the professor in India
Mm-hmm.
while I was working in New Delhi.
Okay. Okay. So I'm guessing that you did not have much of a gap in your CV because of this on paper.
Yeah, I did not.
Okay, that's a good point to note because that's really frowned upon at some programs when you don't have a lot on your CV after medical school.
Definitely, but sometimes, like say for example, in my case, like I mentioned about the FMG, like I had 6 months that I essentially lost because of my FMG. But the thing was that that was the only thing that I could mention, that the next eligible exam that I could have taken was 6 months later, so I couldn't essentially do anything else with that time.
Okay.
So for that gap of 6 months, I didn't really like say anything to sugarcoat it or anything. I said it as it was on my application.
Okay. And they understood, obviously.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to ask you to, briefly explain the process of getting into surgical residency because I myself don't have much of an idea about the whole process. So would you mind, shedding some light on how it works?
sure. So surgery. So there are multiple types of programs that are there in surgery, and it's important to understand as to how these programs are, because you have general surgery prelim, you have general surgery categorical, you have something called integrated neurosurgery, integrated cardiothoracic surgery, you have integrated orthopedics, plastics, and stuff like that. So when you see all these pool of multiple surgical programs, right? Um, for an IMG, the way I have been taught as well is that it's the easiest process is to get into a preliminary position. A preliminary position is essentially a 1 year position.
Okay.
So it's a conditional 1 year contract. It counts towards your residency, it counts as your PGY 1 year. It also pays you as a resident as any other intern all over the US. Um, But the thing is that because it's only a single year contract, that's
Mm-hmm.
why you have to apply again for the NRMP match.
Okay.
The When you compare that to a categorical position is a complete training. So for surgery, it's 5 years. So you're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to do 5 years of general surgery to become a board certified general surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for categorical, that means you start in PGY1 and you finish in your 5th year. And when you finish, you meet the requirements for board certification in general surgery.
Okay.
Conversely, if you talk about integrated programs are like, say, for example, um, integrated thoracic surgery. It's
Mm-hmm.
a 7 year program.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact of the matter is, because it's very competitive, because they
Mm-hmm.
don't have as many programs that offer that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there is a minimal, I wouldn't say minimal, there is a very slight chance of an IMG getting into a categorical position in a integrated thoracic surgery position. If I remember correctly, for the match 2020, I
Mm-hmm.
think only 4 people got into a integrated, 4 non-US IMGs got into a integrated thoracic surgery program.
Okay. So, suppose, so what happens if you do your PGY1 as a preliminary resident?
So when you do your PGY1 as a preliminary resident, there are certain benefits of it.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you're already in the system. There's a program that is sponsoring you. There's a program that is, well, willing to take a chance on you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you work for the program, and say, for example, all the experience that you gain during your residency. So say, for
Mm-hmm.
example, let's assume that because I'm gonna apply for the subsequent match as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I apply in October this year,
Mm-hmm.
2020, I will have an experience of June, July, August, September, and
Mm-hmm.
October as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 5 months of US clinical experience that is added onto my CV.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Within those five months, I can obviously also ask for new letters of recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Again, these would be from people who are in the US, and comparing that to someone who, say, doesn't have as much US clinical experience, that's obviously a benefit.
Okay.
Uh, Furthermore, you have a certain exam called the ABSITE, that is the American Board of Surgery in Training examination. That's usually held in the latter part of January
Mm-hmm.
every year. So it's an examination that every surgical resident has to take every single year.
Mm-hmm.
So you could be a PGY1, you could be a PGY5, but you're
Mm-hmm.
still taking the same examination every year, and
Mm-hmm.
you're ranked according to your percentile. That examination is essentially what is like the make and break examination then.
Okay.
So when you have that examination under your belt, and say, for example, you score well in it, so say, for example, you scored in the 80th percentile or the 90th percentile,
Mm-hmm.
you can rest assured that there would be programs running after you, simply because you have shown in that exam that you are better than 90% of the people,
Mm-hmm.
of all the surgical residents who took that exam that particular year.
Okay.
So these are the things that are in your benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens after a prelim year is that, because you're applying again,
Mm-hmm.
you have to do the whole process of the NRMP match again. You're gonna go onto the interview trail again. You're gonna basically do the whole application procedure and everything again. But the thing is that you are already in the system, and that helps as compared to someone who is just applying fresh out of med school.
Mm-hmm. So after a prelim position, do you directly join PGY2, or is there anything more complicated than that?
So it's slightly more complicated. So when you apply for the NRMP match again, there are three possibilities that you can have.
Mm-hmm.
So the first possibility is that you match into a categorical position.
Okay.
Again, when I say a categorical position, it's the full training. So you could match into a first year categorical. That means that you would have to repeat your first year, or ideally you can match into a second year categorical. That means your first year would count towards your training, and you start off from your second year till the end of your training.
Okay. Okay.
That would be essentially the ideal condition that you want.
Yeah. Best case
If
scenario.
that Yeah, the best case scenario. If that doesn't happen, there's something called a preliminary second year, which is essentially again a conditional contract for the second year. So that would again count as your second year training, but you have to apply for the match again. It's another year of slight uncertainty, if you match, if you don't match, all of that.
Okay.
And obviously the whole process of applying for the match is pretty tedious as well.
Yes.
The third thing is that you apply for the match and you don't match at all. And if that happens, and depending on your visa type, say for example, if you're on a J1 visa, such as I am, you would have to serve a 2-year home country return, which is applicable for most of the countries. So that is, I think this is the point that is the most discouraging point for most of the applicants, simply because if they don't match after a prelim, they are in a very dicey situation wherein they have to go back to their home country.
Yeah. That is a
And
scary situation.
yeah, but what I found out, in my case, what I found out is that even though there's not much information online, or there are not many people who share their stories as to how they matched into a surgical position and everything, but there are an ample number of surgeons who are in training, who have crossed this bridge of prelim and categorical, who are actually in very advanced positions as well. And I think that for a person who's really passionate about surgery, a person who's committed to the time that it would take to get into surgery, and the labor intensive process that it is, I think it's a risk worth taking.
Yeah. I mean, if you love it, it's anything is worth it, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, it's something you're going to be doing for the rest of your life, and if you have to do something you hate, that wouldn't be worth it.
Yeah, I would agree
Yeah.
to that.
I mean, listening to you and, from knowing how passionate you are about surgery, I can tell that you're going to make a great surgeon. So,
Thank you so much.
yeah. Okay. So the next question I want to ask you is, can you tell me something specific about surgery that an applicant should know?
I think the fact of the matter with surgery is, like I said, it's a labor intensive, it's a time intensive process. And when you compare that to, say, for example, other countries, say, for example, if you compare a surgical residency in India, that's 3 years only. So when you are trying to aim for a surgical residency in the US, you have to understand that it will take time. You have to understand that the minimum amount of time for you to be a board certified general surgeon in the US is 5 years in an ideal condition. If that is not the ideal condition, it could be 6 years, it could be 7 years. So you have to understand that this labor intensive, time intensive process requires commitment. If you're not committed to it, if you're in a dicey situation wherein you're like, oh, do I really want to do this? Do I not want to do this? Would I be happy with doing something else? I think it's a lot about introspection. You have to be very sure, you have to be very committed that you want to do surgery. And once you come to that commitment, once you realize that, oh, yes, I want to do surgery and I'm willing to risk it, I'm willing to take the necessary steps, it is at that time that you realize that there are people who are doing it, who are in the process of doing it, and there are people who can guide you through that process. For me, like in my own program, I have people who have matched into a categorical PGY2 directly. I also have in my program people who have matched into a prelim PGY2. So that and I'm talking all about non-US IMGs.
Okay.
So there's a huge number of people who are doing it, but it's just that there's not enough information out there on the Facebook groups, on Instagram, or on YouTube or something like that, for people who are on in this journey. And therefore, many a times the information that you get is from people who are not doing that specialty and are giving you their opinion about a different specialty.
Yeah, totally
So,
agree. Yeah.
and when that happens, it's many a time, like I also felt that, like many a times, that is a little bit discouraging when someone who's not very sure about that specialty gives you paraphrased information about that specialty. So I think the takeaway message for this question would essentially be, you have to be very committed, and once you know that you're committed enough for this, you have to be able to find a person who can guide you through this process, who is in that same specialty, who is able to tell you as to what you can expect, what you can do, how to maneuver yourself
Okay.
during this process.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good answer. And in general, there's this notion that, surgical specialties are highly paid, but the hard work it takes to get into it is, I mean, a lot of times, sometimes it's not even worth it, the hard work. Just for the money, if you get into it and you don't really have a passion for it and then you don't do well, I
Yeah,
mean, you won't make it if you don't have a passion for it. That's another matter altogether. So,
that is true.
yeah.
So, like as far as the money is concerned, obviously, yes. The more the procedures in that particular specialty, so even cardiology, even interventional radiology, the more the procedures, the more your compensation would be. That's why you have orthopedic surgery, neurosurgery, that are essentially the best paid specialties. But with all of that said, if you don't like doing
Exactly.
something that
Yeah. Yeah.
then you would be suffering. If you can't stand in, so say for example, if you're a neurosurgeon and you can't stand in a intense environment wherein you're doing a 10-hour surgery on the clock, like
Yeah.
without stopping, you can't do it.
Yeah.
If you're a cardiothoracic surgeon and you can't do a 6-hour CABG and follow it up with a valve replacement, then you would be miserable.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, any amount of money in the world is not, sufficient if you don't like it.
Yeah, and especially when you grow older,
Yeah,
when you're maybe 50 and you realize, oh shit, what have I done?
yeah. Okay. So that I really liked your answer to my previous question. Okay.
Thank you.
So the next thing that I want to ask you is, in your opinion, what exactly is it that program directors in general surgery look for in an applicant?
So what I feel for general surgery is that your application, your scores, and everything, to an extent, open doors. So say for example, if you have amazing scores, you have 260 in both the steps and everything, they will obviously open a lot of doors for you. But many a times you don't have that. Many a times, even in my case, I didn't have scores as formidable as that. But it's not just your scores that matter, it's your whole application. And I feel that's true for all specialties, that it's not just your scores. People emphasize scores because scores are the most quantitative thing that you can look at. But there are many things, how you present in your application, your work experience, your volunteer experience, your research experience, that will also count towards your application. And one of the biggest things that other than scores, other than your application and your personal statement, that the program directors look for is letters of recommendation, especially in surgery. Because if you have surgical letters from renowned surgeons, from surgeons who are at the forefront of surgery in their respective fields in the US, that is obviously considered better than a letter of recommendation from someone who's not as renowned, someone who's not as famous, or someone who's um, not really into academics or doesn't have as many contacts.
Yeah.
So I do feel that surgery is to an extent about your contacts as well, and the people you know, and the people who are willing to call up someone on your behalf. So if someone who's writing your letter is able to call up, say, an XYZ program and say, hey, this is a medical student that I worked with he was here for an elective and he's good. If someone is willing to vouch for you, I think that goes a long way. And when it comes to the actual interviews, I've in both of my interviews, and I know that it's not a huge sample size to go from, but in both of my interviews, the program director did not read my application. When you reach the interviews, um, it's a level playing field. So it could be XYZ person next to you. He could have formidable scores. He could have formidable letters. Once you're invited for the interview, I think you're on a level playing field. And what they're actually looking for is someone who is passionate, someone who is personable, and someone who is willing to work hard. And I think those are the three most important things that I would say the program directors would look for during the interview.
Okay. I just want to add something though. I mean, obviously, between a person who comes across as really passionate, etc., and a person who comes across as a douche face, for lack of a better name, obviously they're going to pick the former person. But if both people seem pretty much similar on the interview day, I think they still do go back to the CV and rank according to all the other things that are there on the CV. I don't know. It's just my personal
So
experience.
what I felt, I would talk about my experience, and so in my the place where I'm at, I did an observership over there. Um, so I did an observership. I got to know residents in general surgery at the place where I'm at, Jackson Memorial University of Miami, and I feel that as much as my scores might have lagged, or I feel that I did impress the residents enough and the attending in cardiothoracic surgery enough that they were able to at least put in a word for me.
Okay.
And when that happened, I feel that insight connection maybe worked in my favor.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely. Yeah.
and furthermore, like when I was finished with my observership, I was looking for other options as to what I can do. Like I said, one of my mentors told me that prepare for the worst, and I was preparing for the worst. So I reached out to the general surgery residents again, and then I asked them that if there's something that I can help with, if there's research that they're doing that I can help with or something. And that is actually when one of the general surgery residents at Jackson reached back and told me that he was working on a certain paper and I could actually help him with certain aspects of that paper. So even though, say, because one of the things with research is that for it to be paid or for it to be official, you have to be on a J1 visa, J1 research visa for an IMG. But if you're just sitting at home, if you're willing to volunteer your time and you're able to show that you can manage certain things within that research, you have the baseline knowledge to conduct a research. I think it is helpful, and I felt that the general surgery resident was able to trust me enough to delegate certain tasks to me. And even though I was just doing everything remotely from home, um, I was still able to get that publication out with him.
Oh, that's great. I mean, to be able to stay at home and actually get research done in the US, that's very admirable.
Yeah, so what happened with me was because I can't really have that down in my application as research experience, but I can definitely have that down as a research publication
Okay.
because officially I was never affiliated with the hospital officially.
Yeah.
I was just literally helping the resident.
Okay. Okay, so moving on to the next question, I just want to ask you, suppose there's a medical student in medical school right now and they are passionate about surgery. What exactly is it that they can do to match into a categorical position at the first attempt?
So for you to match into a categorical position, I think obviously you need to get your interviews.
Mm-hmm.
So, and for that, the most important thing would obviously be your scores.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing would be your personal statement and your letters.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think those are the three things that count the most
Mm-hmm.
when you're applying for surgery.
Okay.
Um, and if you have any place that you lack, say for
Mm-hmm.
example you don't have a formidable score, say for
Mm-hmm.
example you don't have enough research experience,
Mm-hmm.
say for example you don't have enough elective experience in the US,
Mm-hmm.
all of that thing, like it can be made up in the sense that it can be covered for. Say for example you don't have enough scores, you should probably try to do a year of research.
Mm-hmm.
um, Say for example if you don't have enough USCE,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you can do go ahead and do observerships and try to impress your immediate colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
So I would definitely say that that the most important thing would be to impress them and compensate for whatever you're lacking, because it's very it's not very common that you find a perfect application all the time, right?
Of course, of
uh,
course.
there are people I know that have failed step 2 CS and still matched into a surgical prelim.
Okay.
Um, I know people who have attempts on step 2 and still matched. So obviously there would be a lot of remedial work that you're going to have to do. You might have to do a year of research, you might have to do more observerships, and obviously all of that adds to the cost.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're willing to commit yourself to it, I think it's worth the effort.
Okay. Okay. And coming to research, for internal medicine, research is something that's like, oh, it's kind of nice to have it, but it's not that you cannot match without it. But what do you feel about general surgery? Do you think that research is kind of indispensable when you want a proper categorical position in surgery?
I think so, because I do know someone who matched into a plastic surgery position, a non-US IMG, in the match 2020.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Okay.
they did 2 years of dedicated plastic surgery research.
Mm-hmm.
So I do feel that when you really want a particular super competitive specialty, other than your application, your research is gonna make you stand out.
Okay.
Um, the experience first of all of conducting a research, because
Mm-hmm.
many programs, especially the ones like say for plastic surgery,
Mm-hmm.
are highly competitive. They
Mm-hmm.
are a limited number, and they're only at places with huge reputation.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are applying to a place with such a huge reputation, you should have a CV that complements that place. If you're applying with mediocre scores and with say no research experience, I think that would be seen in a negative light.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so so I would definitely say that research is important for a categorical position.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Irrespective of which kind of surgery that you apply for. But with all of that said, I would also say that it doesn't matter that your research is in the US or not,
Okay.
because you can, as a medical student, I understand that not everyone has the ability to get into a research associate position in the US for 1 year and invest that much time and money into it.
Mm-hmm.
You could, as a medical student, work with your professors in your med school, try to publish there, as long as the publications are in a indexed international journal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have the you have the publications to really support your CV.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think, like, irrespective of where you are, as long as you are doing something, as long as you're publishing, I think it will work in your favor.
Okay, that makes sense. So, basing off of your answer to anyone who wants to apply for surgery and they are in medical school right now, they should try to get the best possible scores as much as possible. But if you don't, it's not the end of the world. And try to get some research in surgery, stay proactive, get publications done, do electives in the US, get good letters, and apply for general surgery if that's what you really want in life.
Yeah, I would second that.
Okay. I just wanted to repeat this properly because I get a lot of questions about general surgery and I don't know much about it and I don't like to spread, wrong information. So that's why I was really looking forward to having you here as well today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I could possibly add is find yourself a mentor. I feel, in my case, like I said about the general surgery resident that I met at Jackson, he essentially eventually took me under his wing, kind of a thing.
Oh, that's
Um,
wonderful.
and that's why, when you find yourself a mentor, especially in the same specialty, I think it's really helpful because
Okay.
these are the people who know, who can answer your stupid questions as well. Because I am sure I have asked so many stupid questions to that particular resident. um, they can answer all your questions. They can guide you through as to what should be done and what are your possibilities, and what you can do to improve yourself.
Okay.
And I think that really plays an important role when you're able to find yourself a mentor,
Okay.
because they can guide you through the process. They've been through the process, and they know the nitty gritty stuff that maybe someone else from that specialty might not.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And is there something you wish you knew when you were starting out, with the whole process?
um, I wish I was more decisive in the
Okay.
sense that in the sense that I wish I would have started preparing for the steps a little bit earlier in med school rather than towards the end of my internship. Um, and the other thing is that the clarity that I had, that I only want surgery. And when I was ranking my programs, I remember I had this whole discussion: should I even rank the primary care programs for internal medicine at all, or just rank the preliminary surgical ranks?
Okay.
That clarity that I had, that I only want surgery, if I had that maybe while I was in my med school, or while I was preparing for even my step one or step two, I think I could have directed my efforts in a more concentrated way towards that particular goal.
Yeah.
Um, because I did like four electives. If say for example, if I had four surgical electives, that stands out better than say two internal medicine, um, surgical electives. But with all of that said, even if you might have your feet in two boats, um, make sure that you can complement it in the sense that I'll just give an example. So, like I said, I had two cardiology electives and two electives. Sorry, one elective in general surgery, one elective in uh, neurosurgery, and one observership in cardiothoracic surgery. So the way I presented it is that I am interested in cardiothoracic surgery eventually after my general surgery residency.
Okay.
So the way I presented the whole thing, the idea of me even doing cardiology electives, was so that I can complement the information or the experiences in cardiothoracic surgery, and that
Okay.
was my ultimate goal.
Okay. That makes sense.
So these are the things, I would definitely say that I wish I was more decisive a little bit earlier on, so that that way I could have focused my energy onto doing the thing that I really want.
Okay. So, since you mentioned it, so your plan is to do general surgery and then go on to subspecialize in cardiothoracic surgery.
Yeah, so right now I have a liking for cardiothoracic surgery and vascular surgery,
Okay.
which
So, how does
are a
that
little.
work?
So the way it works for, especially in my case, because I'm on a J1 visa, um, the thing that would come into play would be a J1 waiver job. that I would have to essentially do after I'm done with my general surgery residency.
Okay.
Um, but after that, I can apply for a cardiothoracic surgery fellowship. So it
Okay.
would be 5 years of, in an ideal world, 5 years of general surgery, uh, and then maybe then 3 years of waiver, and then 3 years of cardiothoracic surgery.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. And is there anything else you'd like to tell the people who are listening to you right now?
The thing that I would like to say, and I think it's a more general thing, it doesn't really apply to general surgery,
Yeah.
is that USMLE is a very dynamic journey. It's not just a single exam, it's not just a single result that will determine your whole future. So the thing is that even if you have a negative or a red flag in a certain area of your application, there are ways to compensate for it. Um, and because you have those options of compensation, and you might have to do some remedial work, you might have to do more electives, you might have to spend more time doing observerships, you might have to uh, even in certain cases people do MPH, and that's like Masters of Public Health, as a separate course. But all of these things are remedial and will add on to your journey. And if you really want it, I feel that USMLE is an examination that is for the people who are literally very stubborn, who who will not take no for an answer. So if
Yeah.
you're very stubborn about it, um, you will eventually match, and you will eventually be able to reach the goal that you want to reach out for.
Yeah. That's a great message. Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much for talking to me and spreading some good information about surgery. And I wish you all the best. I know that you have to apply again this year. I'm guessing you're already working on it right now.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So I wish you all the best for that, and I hope to see you, reach great heights.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
and I
Okay.
wish you all the best with your residency as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay. So you
All
can
right.
cut. Yeah. You can cut the stop the thing recording. So that's all for today, you guys. I hope you liked this video and that it helped you in some way. If you have any recommendations for future videos, please leave them in the comment section. I would love to hear more from you all. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also follow me on Instagram at An Indian Girl's Journey. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.